I hope everyone is able to see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Shabaz. I'm a program manager in the Azure Network Security Customer Experience Engineering team at Microsoft. Today, myself and my colleague Gustavo will be talking about new features in Azure Firewall like structured firewall logs and policy analytics. Here's the introduction for the presenters, including myself on the left and Gustavo, my colleague, on the right. Moving on to the agenda, we will be starting with introduction and background on the Azure Firewall and its capabilities. And then we will talk about structured firewall logs. We will cover how resource-specific logging will be beneficial to us. And then we'll talk about the configuration of this particular feature. And then from there onwards, my colleague Gustavo will be taking over and talking about policy analytics. And he will cover about key features and how to enable that feature as well. And then we will go over a demo on these two features that we just discussed. Just to provide a background, what is Azure Firewall? Azure Firewall is a cloud-native, highly intelligent firewall service, which has built-in high availability and auto scalability and requires zero maintenance. So basically, we all have seen on-prem firewalls before, and all of them need regular maintenance. We have to upgrade the firewalls, we have to patch the firewalls, we need to be up to date with the versions and all of that. We don't need any of that with the Azure Firewall. This is all maintained by the Azure infrastructure itself. So when you look at the image on the right side, we can see the scenarios in which the Azure Firewall can be used. For example, on the left of that image, we can see that Azure Firewall can be used to enforce policy between two spoke VNets in the Azure environment itself. So that is basically east-west traffic. It can also be used to enforce policy to filter traffic which is outgoing to the internet, which is north-south traffic. Apart from these two scenarios, Azure Firewall can also help us with filtering and enforcing policy on traffic flows between the Azure environment and the on-premises environment. So the key benefits of using Azure Firewall is, like I said, it can enforce network and application traffic filtering depending upon the rules that we configure. It has, advanced features like built-in threat intelligence and IDPS, which are really important these days. And then talking about the deployment, it is very easy to deploy Azure Firewall, and it can be deployed in, just a matter of minutes. And like I said before, it has, built-in high availability and auto scalability features. So we don't have to think about the throughput and everything. It auto scales itself depending upon the processing of the traffic that it is doing. And then the last point there in the key benefits cover the fact that it will be able to enforce policy on east-west traffic as well as north-south traffic, like we just discussed. And going on to the supported SKUs section, we basically have 3 SKUs as of now for the Azure Firewall. The first one there, the basic SKU, is a new one, which is currently in the private preview. So in this SKU is basically targeted to these small, medium business segments where customers are needing the nitty-gritty features of firewall enforcing and network and application filtering. So at that point of time, they don't have to pay extra for the features they do not need and can go for the basic SKU. And then when we talk about the standard SKU, it has a couple of extra features when we compare it with the basic SKU. And those features are like web content filtering, DNS proxy, and there is threat intelligence filtering as well. And on similar lines, if we talk about the last SKU that is present there, which is our premium SKU, it has all the advanced features like TLS inspection, IDPS feature, and also URL filtering. So these are all really great features to have in any next-gen firewall configuration, and that's what the Azure Firewall is providing as well. So this is a great service for us to protect our payloads in the Azure environment. Moving on, just to stress up on the importance of network security and security configuration on the infrastructure of organizations. it's really important to maintain and have a proper network security posture for any organization, because simple misconfigurations can cause a huge impact. We are seeing some of the examples. These are the incidents that happened in the recent past, which have caused huge impacts to organizations that didn't have proper configuration on their security side of things. So that's where Azure Firewall comes into the picture. So that's where we need to have a proper policy setup on the firewall configuration on our environments, as well as having a good security posture is really important. So for any firewall to have real good security features, it's really important for it to have solid logging capabilities as well as real good insights to the firewall policies. And that's what we are going to talk about in this today's session. So I'll be starting with the first feature that we are going to be covering about. The first feature is the structured firewall logs. So what is structured firewall logs? If you have used Azure Firewall before, you might have observed that when you were configuring the diagnostic settings for the logging purposes of Azure Firewall, you would have only seen one table, which is Azure Diagnostics table, which collects every log information from network rules, application rules, and DNS proxy events and everything. But now in the structured firewall logs, we have separate resource specific tables, which will collect specific information from the logs. Like the network logs will get collected in the network table. Similarly, the application log will get collected in a separate table for application logs. So how is this going to benefit us? It has a few benefits, which we have listed here. It basically makes it much more easier to work with the data in the log queries. And it is also easier to discover schemas and their structure. Another thing is it improves performance of the queries. It improves the query times, lessens the ingestion latency and everything. So this is a really good feature to have. And on top of all of this, we can also have granular control over the tables, which the users can have access to. By using the role-based access control, we can give specific rights to on a specific table of these logs. So which is also providing us more granular functionality on the logging side of the firewall. Moving on, when we look at the different categories of tables for the structured firewall logs, we have just listed the different categories. We totally have 10 new categories, which we use for logging of respective firewall rules. For example, the network rule log table will have the logs from the network rules, and the NAT rule log table will have the logs from the NAT rules, so on and so forth. This is pretty self-explanatory, and having this kind of distinguished and logging capabilities will help us with troubleshooting, will help us with auditing, and also will help us with advanced features like policy analytics, which we'll be covering in the next segment. Moving on to the configuration side of things. So since this particular feature is in public preview, we have to enable this feature at the subscription level once, and you can get the more details about how to enable this feature and all in a blog that we have published recently in the tech community, Microsoft tech community network security blogs we have. I've referenced the link below in this particular slide. But once we have enabled that, the basic configuration for this is very simple. You just go to the diagnostic log setting, and instead of configuring the destination table here as the Azure Diagnostics, we configure it as the resource specific table. And then we select the logs that are newly available here. We can be as precise as possible. We can select only the ones that we want and make it as customizable as possible. So as we have discussed before, these are the new log categories and which have separate new tables for them, which will help us with querying and everything like we discussed. Moving on, just to demonstrate an example of how this particular new resource specific logs will be beneficial to us. If you look at the screen, at the bottom of the screen, we have some of the logs collected. This is an example from the Azure Diagnostics table. So if you look at the highlighted section in the logs, all of the important information like the source IP, the destination IP, the action and everything is all only available in one column, which is the message column. And then it's not easy to read. In order for us to make it readable by a security analyst in general without having extra efforts, we need to parse the data that is present in that column. In order to parse that data, we need to run a query which is very complex, which you can see at the top of the screen. Around like it has 20 lines in it, and lots of parsing is going on there, and without which we won't be having segregated data columns like we are seeing, like the source IP, source port and everything. So this is manual work we have to do, and which is not desirable. Where in the case of resource specific logging, which is the part of the new structured firewall logs, as you can see at the top of the screen, the query is actually very simple. It just has 2 or 3 statements there. And with just that query, you can see the logs are very clean, very much distributed and organized. You can see all the details like source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port, so on and so forth. So basically, this is allowing us with greater visibility, simplicity of the logs, and simplicity of the query, and also reducing the latencies and query time. So which is really, really beneficial. And this will also help us with populating the data for the policy analytics feature that will be going to talk about in the next segment, like I mentioned. So this is a real good feature to have for any firewall, and I hope everyone is looking forward to this. And moving on to the next section, which is policy analytics, I would like to hand it over to my colleague, Gustavo, to talk about policy analytics and do a demo on these particular features. Hey, Gustavo, the floor is yours.
Hey, Shabaz. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Gustavo Modena, and I'm a senior program manager in the Azure Network Security Customer Experience team. And, you know, as Shabaz just mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the policy analytics feature. And after going through this new feature, I'm going to be running some demos with you all. Let me just share my screen real quick. I hope you all can see my screen right now. But yeah, so Shabaz just covered the new structure logging for Azure Firewall, and as I said, I'll be covering the Azure Firewall Policy Analytics, right? So what I want to start talking about is what this feature really is, right? So Policy Analytics is a new feature that has been released in public preview back in July 2022. And this feature provides insights, centralized visibility and controls to Azure Firewall by using the diagnostic settings, logs, and the firewall policy configurations. We see many IT teams having the challenge to keep firewall rules up to date, manage existing rules, and remove unused rules. And when having a large number of rules and multiple admins managing the firewalls and the policies, it can get more complex and sometimes an error-prone process, right? So now with the policy analytics, you can refine and update the firewall rules and the policies with more confidence based on the insights that are provided, insights and recommendations that are provided by this new feature, and how this new feature provides all this information, all the insights and the recommendations. It's based on the logs that you have enabled and available in your workspaces, right? So that's the reason why we just covered the structure logs, because the structure logs is one of the prerequisites for the policy analytics to work and to provide the information and recommendations that we need. With this feature, you're gonna have granular control to define your own custom rules for an enhanced security compliance posture. This new feature is available through the Azure portal under the firewall policy tab and in the monitoring. So in this screenshot here, we can see the policy analytics in preview available in the left side hand under monitoring. And then in the right side of this screen, screenshot, we have just an overview of, the Insights tab showing each one of the tiles with some highlights and good information about your firewall configuration and your firewall policy. We're gonna be covering each one of these tiles in this demo, in this presentation today, and in the demonstration, we're gonna be going through all of these as well. So now that we know what is the policy analytics, it's important for us to learn the key features, right? So starting with the policy insights panel, as I just mentioned, right? Here we're going to be able to find aggregated insights and highlights of relevant policy information. Next key feature, we have the rule analytics, which analyzes the network and application rules to identify rules with low utilization in a specific time window. When I'm talking about a low utilization, I mean rules with no hits in a specific period of time. Then we have the traffic flow analysis that maps traffic flow to rules by identifying top traffic flows and enabling an integrated experience for admins. And last but not least, we have the single rule analysis, which analyzes a single rule to learn what traffic hits it and to refine the access provided and to improve the overall security posture. To start using the policy analytics, we need to meet a couple of prerequisites, right? So the first one, we need to have a firewall standard or premium deployed and a firewall policy standard or premium attached to it. Then we need to enable the network rule name logging feature, which is also in public preview. Currently, this feature, currently the network rule hit event shows limited attributes, and enabling this feature, the event logs for network rules will show additional attributes as policy name, a rule collection group, and rule collection and rule name. And then the last prerequisite is to enable the structure log firewall logs feature, also in public preview. And as described by Shabaz, with this new feature, you will be able to use resources-specific tables that allows you to utilize new categories. Just adding an important note here that policy analytics will only start tracking the flows in the rule analysis after enabling the feature. If you want to, it will not track any log information in traffic flow before enabling it. So how to enable the policy analytics, right? So assuming you already have the firewall deployed and the firewall policy attached to it, we need to make sure that we have three following items ready for the policy analytics. So the first one is the network rule name logging enable. The second one is the structured firewall logs enable. And the third one is the diagnostic settings configured, sending the logs to the log analytics workspace and using the new resources specific tables. If you want to learn more details about how to enable each one of these items here, please check out our blog post published early this week in our tech community. So I want to start running the demo here. And in our demo, we're going to do first the resource specific logs, some demonstration on how to use the Azure Diagnostics categories and then the new tables. And then after this, we're going to go through the policy analytics. Okay. So now we are in the Azure portal, right? Under the firewall configuration, I need to make sure that the diagnostic settings is enabled, right? So to check the diagnostic settings, we need to, on the left side hand, we need to go to the diagnostic settings tab, where we're going to be able to create the diagnostic settings, right? Here I have two diagnostic settings configured, and then That's because I need to, for this demonstration, I wanted to show the difference of querying the logs in the Azure Diagnostic table and then querying the logs in the new resource table. So if we check this first one here and click Edit Settings, we're gonna see how the configuration is. So I'm pretty much selecting these three tables which send the log to the Azure Diagnostic. And I'm using the destination table Azure Diagnostic and using the workspace that I want to send the data to. Then we have the second configuration here, which is selecting all the tables available. And I'm sending the data to a log analytics workspace, and the destination table needs to be a resource-specific one. So once it's enabled, and then I go to the log analytics workspace to start querying, I'm gonna show, as Shabaz already demonstrated in the screenshot, the differences between using the Azure Diagnostics and then the new resource-specific tables. So here first, here we have a query to find all the network data regarding traffic, network traffic going through the firewall, where the action is denied, right? So if we see here, I had to inform the location where I want to, run this query. Then I need to inform the category of the the category of the log that I'm looking for. In this case, the Azure Firewall Network rule. Then we have the operation name. I want to make sure that the logs coming to as a result here are only Azure Firewall Network rule logs. Then I want to make sure the logs are from my specific firewall. So the resource here is FWPrem. And the MSG_S contains action denied. Remember that when Shabaz was talking about these logs and showing the differences, he mentioned that all the data, the important data for the NetSec admins are under the MSG_S column. So if we go here, we're going to see that under the same column, we have the protocol, the source and the destination, the source IP, source port, destination IP, and destination port. What was the action on that? And what's the policy name, rule collection, and the final in the rule name. So if I want to query and look for information here, I need to kind of I have two options, right? The first one, I can parse the data, and then I'm gonna show how you can parse the data and put it in different columns, or you need to understand, how the structure of the data within this column here, and then you start looking for specific sentence within that column. For example, if I want to find everything which is denied, I have to where the action is denied, right? I need to put the action column deny here, because in this case, for example, my rule name is deny. So if I was only looking for, MSG_S contains deny, I would be seeing maybe only the rule, but not exactly all the logs regarding action deny, right? So this is just an example of how you need to query the data by using the Azure Diagnostics. Then we have the next example, which is using the new resource-specific table. So in this case, if you see, I'm not using Azure Diagnostics anymore. I'm sending this query to the AZFW network rule table. And then I can be very specific, saying bring all the data where the action contains deny. And I'm just putting these in the resource ID contains FWPrem because that's the file that I want to check the data from, right? Just remembering that for example, if I have multiple firewalls and then I have the diagnostic settings configured in all of them, sending it to the same log analytics workspace, if I don't, specify what resource I'm looking the data for, it will bring the data for every single file that I have configured the diagnostic settings, sending the logs to the workspace. So if we see here, right, we don't have the MSGS column showing all the data within one single column, right? We have different columns, one for each information. So we have for source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port. We can clearly see the action here, and then also the name of the policy and the name of the rule collection group, rule collection, what rule within the rule collection, the type of rule, and resource ID, right? So I know exactly. In this case, I don't need to run, a parse to be able to see it in different columns. And one benefit of using this new resources specific table is the performance of running this query. So if you see in both queries, I'm pretty much bringing the same data, right? And then if we compare the query details here, this query ran in 62 milliseconds. And then if I go back to the previous one and check query details here, it took like 10 times more than 10 times, so 796 milliseconds. In this case, I have, just a few logs. I'm checking pretty much the same time range here, last 7 days in both queries. And we can clearly see that using the Azure Diagnostics tables took way more than using the new resources specific tables. So that's one of the main benefits of using these resources specific tables. One last thing that I want to show here is, a lot of people know that, okay, I really can split this data from the MSG_S in different tables, right? So what you can do if you create a new query here and then you go to your left side hand under file logs, you can select here network rule log data, and then it will bring, already what's the query that you need to run to be able to split the data. So if you do these, let's do last 4 hours. In the output here, you're going to see that I still have the MSG_S, and then I have all the columns for each one of the data that I want to check. So for example, if I want to go here and then start querying, adding some filters to bring only the logs for, where the action is allow or deny or denied, then I can do it after parsing it. Parsing, it's depending on the amount of data that you have, parsing will take a little bit more time because it needs to read the MSG_S the content and then put it in different columns. So that's also another benefit of using the new resources specific tables. For those that are not sure how to write KQL queries and then want to start learning it, or maybe seeing what are the queries that are available, and then from there you start building your own queries, you can use the built-in queries that are available in the Azure portal. Here in the left side hand, we have the ones for the Azure Diagnostics, and then we have the ones for the new resources specific tables. So we can see the differences of the tables that, of the queries that we have here. So we have tables specifically for DNet, for DNS, for ADPS, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that was it for the resources specific logs, what I wanted to demonstrate. Then let's go to the policy analytics. So as I mentioned, the policy analytics is a feature which is part of the policy, the Azure Firewall policy, right? So to be able to find the policy analytics, we need to go to the policy we want to analyze. And then on the left side menu, we can just scroll down to monitoring and then click policy analytics preview. So in this first, when we just click on the policy analytics preview, we're going to see this first page here, which is the insights. And then in this insight tab, we're going to see some pretty good information about our policy and our firewall configuration, right? So here we are seeing the number of rules that I have and what's the max, right? This number is not quite correctly. As this feature is still in preview, we are running some updates here, so this number will be changed before this feature going in GA, right? So, but yeah, the important here is to know that with these policy limits, we're going to be able to see if your firewall or your configurations are getting close to the limits that could cause any issues for your production environment. So you can see the max of rules, the max of unique source destinations, and then the IP groups. How many IP groups do you have, right? And what are the firewalls that are approaching to the DNAT rule limits? In this case, I don't have any firewall approaching this DNAT rule limit. If you want to know, if you click here in this eye icon, you're going to see this firewall FW Prem has used approximately 1 DNAT rule out of the available 297. And this information is per firewall, right? Then next we have the rules with multiple IP addresses. Here we are seeing your rules are all good. But the thing here is that this tile is configurable. So if you click on this engine icon here on the top right side, you can specify between 0 and 100 in the source IP address or in the destination IP address. So in the public preview, these configurations are not going to be saved. So every time you come to the policy analytics, you need to change this information here, this parameter here, to the amount of IP addresses that you want to see. So I'm going to change it from 10 to 2, both in source and destination, and I'm going to apply it. And once we apply it, we're going to see that I have two rules with more than 2 destination IPs, in total of 20, right? So if this 20 total here is these 20 rules that I have. So if I click on the recommendation, I will be able to see what is the rule name, which has multiple IP addresses in source or destination, the rule collection group, and then what is the recommended action here. So this rule has more IP addresses in the source destination than the chosen threshold. Why do we have this recommendation here? Because if you have multiple IP addresses in the source and destination, maybe you would benefit of using the IP groups instead of writing down the IP addresses manually in every single rule. So if you this recommendation here is to consider using IP groups instead of having multiple IP addresses in different rules. Next, we have the rules with low utilization. And as I mentioned, right, the rule utilization is to show what are the rules that have no hits within a specific period of time. Again, we have this engine icon on the top right side, where we can specify the time period. In preview, we only have 30 days available. It's not giving us the choice of selecting 60 or 90 days. So we're gonna let these as 30 days, and it checks the traffic log, all the logs that we have available within 30 days, and we can see what are the recommendations we have here. So if we go back, it's saying that we have 12 rules with no hits within 30 days, in the last 30 days. If we click here, we're going to see what are the rules that have no hits, what are the description, and actually the description is just saying that there was no hit in the specified time period, right? And then what's the recommendation? To delete, disable, or move this rule to a rule collection with lower priority. That way you can you don't need to process that rule before some other rules that are really being used for in your firewall. Then we have the duplicate rules, and then in the duplicate rules we're gonna see with redundant rules and then duplicated IP addresses within the same rule. So We can also change the configuration here to show, 2 or more rules with exactly same values for all rule parameters except name. We can do, select two or more rules where the source or destination of one fully contains the others and all other rule parameters match except name, and the other one rule with duplicate sources or duplicate destinations. So if you change these configurations here, you're going to see that maybe depending on what exactly it's duplicated in your configuration, you're going to see different information here. So for example, right now, I only have this one enabled, right? Asking to show 2 or more rules with exactly the same values for rule parameters except name, and it's showing only one redundant rule. So if I go here in this recommendation, I will be able to see what is the duplicated IP addresses and what are the redundant rules. This one is pretty much showing everything, right? But it's not following the filter that I applied here. This filter that I apply here will only affect this tile representing, showing the number of redundant rules or redundant IP addresses. So I'm gonna select everything again. Let's go back to the recommendation. Then we can see, right, we have 2 rules with duplicated IP addresses in the, duplicated IP addresses. And then in the redundant rules, we can see that we have 2 rules with the exact same values except the name, right? So this is gonna give you some guidance on finding what are the rules with duplicated data that you can go, and do some cleanup to make your file better. Then we have the generic rules. The generic rules is pretty much considering rules where you have wildcard in the source or destination. In this case, it's saying, I have 4 rules with wildcard in the source and 1 rule with a wildcard in destination. We can go here and see related recommendations and what's the recommended action. Run the single rule analysis. I'm going to show later how to run this single rule analysis. And in the description, it says, right, where the wildcard was found, if in the source, in destination, or both.
Sorry to interrupt. Is it just me not hearing the audio, or?
Hey,
Yes,
can you-
Gustavo, we're unable to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. I heard that.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, sorry for that. What was the last part you heard me?
You can probably go like 30 seconds back or so.
Okay, so I think I was talking about generic rules, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So the generic rules will show what are the rules where you have wildcards in the source or destination IP in destination IP addresses, and then you can see clearly here what are the rules, and you can from here it will give you a clear idea what are the rules that you need to check, and the recommended action here is to run the single rule analysis. We're gonna go through this after a few minutes. Then lastly, we have these potentially malicious sources where we're going to see threat intelligence and IDPS. I don't have any logs, any events for threat intelligence, but I do have some events for IDPS. These are the signatures that are being, that we have available in our IDPS, and they are getting logged. And depending on the configuration of your firewall, it's getting blocked as well. So we can see what's the source IP address and then how many events we do have for it. And if we click recommendations, we should be able to see the logs here. Right now, we are having a problem in this part, which is not showing the logs correctly, but we can clearly see the events and the source IPs. Then if we go to the resources specific tables, we're going to be able to find those logs in the IDPS table. Okay, then we do have the tabs for the rules itself, for DNet, network, and application. So for we can select here the time frame we want to check the heats for the rules. I'm gonna do 30 days for DNet, and then we can see that in the last 30 days I only have 74 matching flows for this DNet rule here. Then we can see what are the source IPs and what's the translated destination IP and the port. So it also gives you some good information. For example, a lot of these IP addresses are not, I don't recognize. So I could use this information to create some blocking rules in my firewall and then make it more secure. Then we have the same for network and application rules, right? So if I select here in the last 30 days, I'll be able to see the total hit count for this app2 infra subnet rule. And then if I expand these, I will be able to see the source IP address and what's the destination IP address. And the same for the application rules, right? For the application rules, instead of showing the destination IP address, in this case, mine is using, FQDNs. It's going to show what's the source IP address, what's the protocol, and what's the FQDN, and how many hits I had. Then we have the traffic flows. The nice thing on the traffic flows here is that it shows all the flows that your firewall had within up to 30 days, in the last 30 days, and then you can see clearly the name of the rule collection, rule name, what's the Azure firewall here, instance here, the source and destination IP addresses or the FQDNs, for example, for our application rules, the ports, the protocol, and the heat counts. And in the last column, we're going to see if that traffic was allowed, denied, or if it was DNet, right? You can depending on the amount of data that you have here, might be helpful to use these filters that we have at the top of the page. So you can do like, for example, show me all the DNet, then it's gonna bring all the DNet traffic flow within the last 30 days. And then the last thing is the single rule analysis. The single rule analysis is pretty good because it gives you the based on the information that you have, based on all the logs that you have, it gives you some recommendations on what to do with that policy. So for example, if I click here, I want to check this app2 infra subnet rule, and I run the analysis, then I will see what's the recommendation. So for example, I can see the matching traffic. So the recommendations that I have here are based on the matching traffic. So the matching traffic is showing these two traffic flows, source 132 to 68 on port 3389 and port 445. And then if I go to the rule recommendations, I can see that it's recommending me to change the rule. So if I unselect the port here, for example, it will show what is the current configuration of the rule. So right now I have the rule allowing access to 3389, 445, 443, and 80. And as I don't have any logs, any traffic flow to 443 or 80, the single rule analysis is recommending me to change the rule to 445 and 3389 only. And that's the same for the protocol and for the source and destination. So if I unselect here the source, it will say, hey, this is the current configuration you have. So you are allowing traffic from all 10.10.0.128/16. And in the traffic flow, we are only seeing traffic from this specific IP address here. So if I select, if I keep all these options selected and I do apply selected changes, it will start making the changes in my policy, and then after the policy is changed, I can confirm the ports or the source and destination IPs have changed as recommended. One other thing that I wanted to show is when we have no hits in a rule. So let me grab one rule that has no hits, this data to infra sub. I'm gonna run the analysis, and then you can see that differently. Instead of recommending to change the source IP source destination IP addresses or the ports, it's saying, hey, I haven't found any matching traffic here. So I give you these two options, right? You can delete the rule because this rule has no hits within any specific time frame, or you can, if you don't want to delete the rule because you are not sure that the rule is not being used, you can move this rule to a lowest priority rule collection group. So when you do it, for example, if I just select move to a lowest priority collection group, this is what the rule will look like. So if I go to my network rules, I can see here it created a rule collection group called default to low utilization rule collection group, and then it moved the rule from the previous collection group to this one with lower priority. So that way you are not deleting the rule is still there, and then you can pretty much, let's say I first want to move this to a lowest priority, and then after maybe 30, 60 days, I will run the single rule analysis again, and I will delete because it may have no hits, right? So that's pretty good to help you making a cleanup on your firewall. When you have a lot of rules, a lot of configurations, it really gives you a good understanding of what you have configured and what you can do to make it better. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. That was the demo that I wanted to present to you all today. And let's open the floor for questions.
Okay, let's see. We've had lots of questions in the chat. And the Q&A team is doing a great job answering them. But we have one here. Are we going to have a Cisco ASA like packet tracer that you can put the source and destination and the ports, and it will let you know which rule it will hit?
Not sure yet if we're gonna have such feature available, right? But that would be like a what if, right? If you put the source and destination, then you can get to know what rule will hit that, right? So right now we don't have it in the policy analytics, but that's a pretty good feedback. We would like to get that information to add as a feedback in our product.
Okay, and the next question. Should policy analytics be sent to the workspace used by Sentinel or to a different workspace?
There is no specific requirement for that. If you want to use the same one that you have for Sentinel, you can use it. I don't remember if Sentinel has a requirement to have a dedicated workspace for it. I don't think it has. But for the policy analytics, it doesn't have a requirement. You can send to the same workspace. You have some other diagnostic settings configured.
Okay, thank you. And is Firewall Policy Analytics is a separate SKU?
Actually, no. The policy analytics is available for if you are using whatever SKU, right? If you're using today, we have available standard and premium, right? So you can have a firewall policy attached to both standard or premium, and once you have the policy, the firewall policy attached to the firewall and the prerequisite, and you are meeting the prerequisites, you don't need to have another different SKU. So you're going to be able to use it with standard or premium SKU.
Okay, thank you. And how many rules can be audited at the same time?
How many rules can what?
Be audited at the same time.
When you say audit, you would need more clarity. I'm not sure if how many rules can be audited by using the single rule analysis, or how many rules can I have within the policy.
Okay.
Because let me try to get it to it right. You can audit the max of rules that you have that we support for each one of the Azure Firewall policies, right? So if you have 10,000 rules there, it's going to be able to, audit all the traffic hitting those rules. So you pretty much are following the supported limits for the firewall policy. In regards of single rule analysis, it's just one rule per time. So you need to select one rule, see what are the recommendations there, and then apply the changes or not apply the changes, and then select the other rules that you want to see what are the recommendations and do the same.
Great, thank you. And let's see, next question. Will it log asymmetric traffic or have PCA PNG captures?
Packet captures is a feature that is in our roadmap for future. It's not available, and it doesn't have. It's not part of the policy analytics, and it doesn't in policy analytics also doesn't show anything about the asymmetric routing.
Okay, thank you. And let's see. If I change logs to resource specific, will logs be queried using Azure Diagnostics on Log Analytics?
Will logs be what? Sorry.
If I change logs to resource specific, will logs be queried using Azure Diagnostics on Log Analytics?
That's a good question. Actually, no. If you change it to resources specific logs, when you query the workspace, instead of using Azure Diagnostics, you need to use the names, the name of the tables. So, for example, in the demonstration that I ran, I ran one query using the Azure Diagnostics, and then I had to put the categories there to filter by category. And when I was using the resources specific logs, instead of using the Azure Diagnostic table, I had to inform what specific table I wanted to run the query. So in that case, I run the AZFW network rules, and then you have the other new tables for application, IDPS, threat intelligence, and DNS proxy, and some others.
Okay, thank you. And let me see, I think we have all of the questions answered. So thank you to Gustavo and Shabaz for being our guests today and for an excellent presentation. And thank you to the rest of the team who helped answer questions. Once again, I would like to remind the listeners that the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements is to visit our landing page at aka.ms/security-community. And while there, you'll find easy ways to navigate and find the resources and learning content relevant to our security products and their communities. A good start would be browsing our bite-sized product videos, ninja trainings, recordings of past webinars, GitHub communities, and more. We love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars. Please take a minute submitting your webinar feedback at aka.ms/AzureNetSecFeedback. Thank you, and see you next time. Goodbye.